we go. Can everyone see my screen now? So you didn't get to see my face. All right, PMO's best practices, team, rules of engagement, what to expect. Here we go. PMO, Project Management Office or Project Management Organization, also called PPM, Project Portfolio Management, at an extremely high level. Some of the benefits: help intake, execution, prioritizing of projects, allowing organizations to really focus their attention on the highest impact projects and work, and laying the groundwork for successful execution. We're going to be talking a lot about ROI today. Really important piece. High level workflow overview of a PMO. We're going to be talking about project intake. So how does work come in? How do we track projects while they're being executed? And then how do we close out projects successfully? With project intake, we'll briefly cover approval and prioritization, review process, some difficulties that can be there. We'll be talking a little bit about approval, go, no go, and kind of how do you know that a project is ready or a process is ready to really go live. And then we'll also be talking more kind of about, standing up project templates, project types, and like how that might work. And then also the, closing out of projects and the project delivery. Every organization is different, but kind of what a PMO can do to help in that area. And then finally, if you're thinking about kind of a more mature PMO where you want to be going best in class, you really want to be thinking about how are we estimating ROI, not just for the project itself, but also for the PMO as a whole or the program as a whole, and then measuring ROI at the end of the project, at the end of the program. All right, really quick, just to level set. So when we think about project high level workflow, same thing: intake of a new project, new idea, who's requesting the project, viewing the status of the project throughout, and then approving that the project is completed successfully. Reviewer, oftentimes a resource manager, so who gets let know that a new project came in and needs to assign resources, and then wants to see the status of the project and potentially is a point of escalation for the project. And then the project team members, the doers that are actually completing the work, what visibility they have, and then also, viewing the status once they've completed the work, and how that really plays into either the strategy of the organization or what they're completing. Okay. So again, very high level. So when we think about benefits of a PMO that we're trying to get to, we want to have increased transparency. We want to have intentional prioritization of work. We want to have, quality, consistency. We want to know what we're expecting for results, and we would expect that the quality, our ability to execute on a project is going to increase by having this PMO. We would expect accountability. We understand who is responsible for what and when and how. We're looking for some roll-up views across the projects, and so that you don't only have to look at every project individually, but you can look at work as a whole. Thinking about resource allocation when you have cross-functional resources that are on multiple projects and or multiple initiatives, and you're having to pick about these kind of key resources, which projects they're on, being intentional about resource allocation. So again, these are some of the benefits we're trying to get to with a PMO, but might be a struggle. And then the governance piece of it, as well as the tracking and analyzing, so that you can be a little bit more proactive and then reactive if you do have a project or a program that's kind of in crisis mode. All right, I'm going to go fast through this first part, and then I'm hopefully going to take a couple more breaths and give you guys some more time on the second half, okay? All right, so when we think about common challenges, these are oftentimes reasons that people are either choosing that, we really need the PMO discipline in our organization, or you might already have a PMO in your organization, but you're still struggling with some of these pieces. So how do you adjust your PMO? How do you improve and mature your PMO in order to address some of these issues? So some of the common challenges, and I believe, Melissa, help me, you did send out a survey for everyone ahead of time. Maybe you can add it into the chat while I'm talking about this, just about the common challenges that we have, and then also kind of where you guys, the audience, think that your biggest challenges are in the PMO space. So common challenges that people either drive them to go ahead and get a PMO stood up, or have a PMO but need to adjust to do this better. Resource forecasting and capacity planning. This is the number one. If you look at PMI, all of their different surveys that they send out to industries, et cetera, really understanding the capacity, where their resources are, and understanding what resources they need and how to allocate resources are big pieces. The other thing is limited visibility on project status. So as an organization grows, oftentimes we see this with organizations that are scaling rapidly or their team is just growing so fast, not knowing what the visibility of different like not knowing what's going on in individual projects until it's too late, until they can't, provide it, until a risk becomes an issue, or even just kind of forgetting about which projects are going on at a given time and kind of that someone has 8 projects on their list right now. So how do you have the visibility on the project status of what's going on? And really, it's not just project status, but it's like the most important information about that project for different people. So one of the things we work with a lot with the clients is it's not just having project data, but it's making sure that you understand your different personas, your different roles in the organization, and what information matters to them at what point so that they can make, again, strategic decisions. So I'm going to keep going with this. So projects that are over budget, behind schedule, not delivering on scope and quality. We just had a client come in today. It was like, this project's been going on. It's 2 years over budget. Or it's 2 years over behind schedule. It's way over budget. Like, this is like leadership's finally saying, you know what, we need a PMO. We need to have, an escalation path, even for these, even if we only have 4 or 5 or 6 big projects, versus organizations that have hundreds. Okay, lack of accountability and ownership. This is a really big one. So I've seen some really well done PMOs, like mature PMOs in an organization that really still struggle with this. So the accountability piece of it, which is having roles versus individuals. And this becomes really apparent as an organization grows and needs to solidify and has people and management moving roles or moving places. So understanding the role, this is kind of the first step, which is like understanding the role and responsibilities of a project sponsor and not having that be a group of people anymore necessarily too. So actually having an individual owner or sponsor, and understanding kind of how they interact with the steering committee or with the executive team, and understanding what level of information that project manager should be sharing with that role, and just kind of really putting those roles in place instead of just knowing I go to Jim or I go to Joe or I go to Barb, right? Like actually knowing who the person is that's accountable for that project. And so that's really important. We talked about RASCI and a couple other tools a little bit later on. Lack of communication across projects. So as an organization grows, oftentimes even really small organizations have a lot of interconnected work that's happening. And how do you articulate those dependencies? How do you articulate those overlap of resources? And oftentimes finding them too late. And then, whether it's a system component in terms of this system wasn't included or this department wasn't included or this project needed to get done in order for this to happen, missing dependencies across projects. And then last, disruptions due to poorly planned project launches. Definitely had some PMOs stood up or people that came in and been like, we did this launch, it was a disaster, it took us 6 months to recover, it took us a year to recover, like we're ready to have a better system in place before we go on for our next big project. Okay, any common challenges or challenges that this group has had that they want to share that maybe I'm not covering? This is not by any means all of the different challenges, but this is definitely kind of the key list from my perspective. Any other challenges people want to add in? All right, Melissa, do we have results? Can you go ahead and send me the link for the results? And I'm going to keep going, but I will share from this group, if anyone has voted in the Menti, what the results for you guys are in terms of your top challenges that you are facing today in your PMO. All righty, I'm going to keep going. So when we think about standing up a PMO, or maybe you already have a PMO and you're trying to articulate the value that your PMO brings to the organization, you really need to think about how much the PMO is costing your organization in terms of effort, as well as budget and overhead and all that other pieces, versus the benefits that you are planning to bring by having a PMO. And so one of the things I coach clients on is understanding what their business case is and really whether a PMO makes sense for their organization. It doesn't make sense for all organizations. That being said, there are PMOs that are really heavy and a lot of effort and very costly that maybe need to be cut back a little bit based on the goals of the organization. So how do you right size your PMO? One of the things, it's a core piece, but creating a business case for a PMO, you can have a PMO right now, but what is the business case that you have for having that PMO that means that it's important to your organization? What are the problems and challenges you're trying to address? Right? I just gave you some core problems and challenges, but think about what are the problems that you are trying to address, that you are trying to solve by having a PMO and the PMO processes. What are the recommended solutions? Maybe it is that you set up a PMO. Maybe it is that you change the main process of your PMO. Maybe it's a new tool that you need in order for your PMO to work, or a dashboard, etc. Maybe you need a new resource. What are the alternative solutions other than adding to the PMO overhead? What are some assumptions you're making that say that you do need the PMO? Risks. What's the estimated cost, effort, and duration? And be honest here about what that level of effort really looks like. And then anticipated return on investment. Okay, really high level. This works for anything projects. I oftentimes work through this with projects. So let's say you're at a point where you are implementing a PMO. Maybe you're midway through, or you are, looking to do that in the next little bit of really standing up a PMO. What I like to point out is that it's a combination, right? Many of you have probably seen this, the PPT framework, right? People, process, and technology for business transformation, scaling, automating, innovating, but really looking for change and culture, strategy, and success, right? So when we think about actually setting up a PMO, it's not just getting a tool. So a lot of people right now are coming to us because we're Smartsheet partners, and we have a lot of traction with setting up project management offices or PMO in Smartsheet. But it's not just the work management platform or the project management platform or the PPM platform that you're choosing. It's understanding what your current process is, where you want to get to, what are the problems you're trying to solve in your process, and the change management to get people, not just your project managers, not just your program managers, but getting your entire organization to adopt the importance of a project management office and the value of it. And there's a significant transition here. This can be a multi-year transition to get you to the point of having a strong, mature project management office. But what's really important and what I want to focus on is, like, even if you say, I don't have anything, we don't have anything, we don't have a PMO, we don't have project management in-house, we don't have this, you still have a current state, right? Even if that current state is just your executive coming by and saying, oh, hey, we got this project, hey, can you look into this? Like, that's still your current process, right? Understanding what your current process is, and there's going to be gaps in terms of current process to future. So whether you are a mature organization, you have an intake process, you have an approval process, or you literally are just, hey, person, can you come look at this for me? You do have a current process and you have a future state, and those current states might be different for different parts of your organization or different people in your organization. Some departments might have a mature process than the other. Understanding that there's a gap between your current state and your future state and what that looks like, and create a plan. I know we all love plans here. A plan for how to bridge that gap between your current state and your future state. Okay. So really quickly about types of PMOs, there are lots of different ways to look at this. I'm just going to do a really high level. So if you think about a PMO, and I honestly think about them in like personas. So I like to put like little funny hats on, which is like a supportive PMO. So they collect and provide procedures and templates and practices and minimal control. So I almost kind of think of it as like a teacher like kind of persona or something like that, versus a controlling, like assures the processes and standards are being followed, performance reporting, monitoring metrics. Like I almost think of it a little bit more, you know what I mean? Like I almost think of it more kind of like a finance aspect of it. I am married to an accountant, so anyways, I think about it more in terms of like standardization and controls and reporting and like And then I think about directive more as like almost like a traffic cop, which is like all aspects of governing the projects across the project prioritization, resource management ever, like it's a very directive, you go here, very categorization. So there's not just 3 types of PMOs. There's all sorts of different PMOs, but those are kind of some of those feelings, as it were, for different project management offices. And the answer is that every organization has different needs and different requirements. And really the important thing is to find the right fit for the PMO, right? Like how do you right size the project management office for your organization? So what is your company size? What is the complexity of the projects that you're looking at? Are you looking at projects that are all 3 months? Are all like big 12-month or longer, like 2 to 3 year projects? Are you looking at an organizational structure that's very flat? Are you looking at an organizational structure that's already very hierarchical? What is the maturity of the organization? Have you grown? Have you doubled in size in the last year and all of your communication is different now, right? And really, what is that culture? And honestly, something to consider that I didn't put on this list is kind of the history. So a lot of organizations might have had a PMO in the past or had a bad experience with a project manager that maybe was too strict for their culture or too heavy in their culture and they just couldn't. So you kind of have to be aware of that history and the behaviors of that history and maybe trying to do this before with another tool and not adopting it. So like understanding that history and then accounting for that in your approach for kind of rolling that PMO and getting buy-in for the PMO. Okay, so the right fit. The other piece is like PMO. There's different types of PMOs and structures. So there's a project management office that's like within a single department. There's a project specific PMO where you stand up this entire PMO just for this major project. Maybe it's a multi-year, funded budget. There's organization-wide PMO that I call them more horizontal. So like all projects roll up to it and maybe the portfolios are like IT versus business or something like that projects. There's project management offices that actually like more closely align with knowledge management. So center of excellence, kind of like here are options for how you can do this better. And then there's project support. So I almost call this more of like a consultative office where people that need project or departments that need projects managers like come in for a consultative PM to help them run their project and be successful with it. All righty, guys. It's important to know where you are. So back to that gap analysis, like evaluating your current PMO maturity. So this is one of our holdovers from one of our kind of more tool oriented, but like first, standardizing your project intake. Do you have a single project list where all the different projects are, your project ideas, as well as the projects that are ongoing? Or are they all over the place in multiple lists and multiple different systems, right? Do you have a single place? Do you have an understanding of project data in your organization? Like when you say go live versus launch versus start versus like different types of deliverables, like does everyone have the understanding of that core information about their projects or programs, or what is a project? I'm working with one client right now, which is just like defining what a project is in an organization. So they have a PMO, they have this, but they don't actually say like this is a project, this is an epic or feature like within an existing, this is a program. Like how are you distinguishing between these things? So again, crawl, understanding kind of what your target workflows are. I oftentimes call this like happy path. Like in the happy path, they would submit it via this form and it would be reviewed by this initial reviewer and then it would be reviewed by the project steering committee. Like maybe you do have some projects that go in through that happy path, right? So you kind of mapped out that target workflow, but you haven't really put the extra, either whether it's documentation or automation or something behind it to really map everyone through this. Maybe you only have a pilot. Do you have a project methodology? Is that understood in your organization? Maybe you have multiple different types of projects and project methodologies. So an IT or a system project might be very different than a business process or a marketing project or something like that. So have you implemented some sort of project methodology and project phases or something that can be rolled up across different projects? And then really, I oftentimes recommend adopting that review and approval workflows as kind of that first step. whether those review and approval workflows are within the project methodology or within like bringing new projects in, starting with that a review and approval happy path workflow. And then really when you're running, like you're constantly in a state of constant prioritization of work, constantly automating tasks that are taking too much time for project managers. Like how are you center of excellence thought, like how are your PMs, how are your stakeholders, how are your sponsors giving you feedback, and you are flexible enough in your organization that you can make those changes without causing everything to stop and having to roll it out with a big rollout. So integration with existing, additional systems, whether those are finance, et cetera, optimizing the views that you're looking at, measuring, really looking at the ROI and understanding, are your project success? What are your targets? What are your KPIs you're looking for? And kind of iterating, understanding that, okay, this is the change we're bringing in now. We're going to bring in additional change later. And you kind of have some sort of cadence for rolling out those improvements. One of the things that we do with organizations is we'll do a PMO maturity assessment, or depending on if they already have a PMO and they might be having some kind of what I call PR issues with some of their non-PMO stakeholders, understanding where people think they are and really getting a baseline for where they are now, so that they can measure in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months after the change and see where they are and if they're heading in that right direction, where their biggest improvements are, and if those are the most important places to focus on. So oftentimes the PMO maturity assessment looks at our stakeholders outside of the PMO, as well as our stakeholders if you do have project management specific stakeholders, right? For a PMO, whether you're in one right now or you're looking to roll one out, I oftentimes recommend, again, this multi-phased approach, this iterative approach, progressive elaboration. Oftentimes I like to start from the top and understanding at a project level what the information is for portfolios, programs, if you have them, but then going down into the project templates and controls and understanding how you can roll up important key pieces of information from a project up to those up levels. So whether those are key milestones that are defined, whether those are, metrics or things like that, how do you roll up that information? And then also one of our number one issues, right, was that resourcing component. So that resourcing and that demand management versus capacity planning, and then looking at what your budgeted focus, what your forecast was versus what your actuals were. Okay. And then definitely ROI, prioritization, looking at how you can do that more often. So oftentimes like a less mature PMO, right, oftentimes goes through, for example, annual planning, and then maybe you get to quarterly planning, but you're not able to prioritize on an ongoing basis. So how do you make those decisions? And how do you empower roles within your organization to be able to make those prioritization calls? And how do you really articulate those different roles and kind of where they need to escalate and not? And then also thinking about your personas. So it's not just a hierarchy within your PMO as a whole and how you manage your work in the project management office, but you're thinking about your end users, your organizations, and how they want to see the data. What information is specific to them? So maybe it's what their resources are allocated towards, and you want to have a view of projects that are only specific, that only have marketing resources on them, right? And you want to be able to start to bring in not stuff that is just managed by PMs in the PMO, but also department initiatives or things like that, so you can overlay both, so you can really get a more holistic picture of work that's happening in the organization. And I always like to point out in roadmaps, right, that there's constantly going to be enhancements. You need to determine what that cadence is for your PMO. I don't think this is shocking information in this group, but just in case, when we think about a hierarchy for PMO, right, like an executive view or a board view, depending on what type of organization you have, a portfolio view. So if you have multiple portfolios, I just did an example of like an organization wide where maybe they have an IT portfolio of projects and a business portfolio. The next level down, programs and then projects. But we have lots of different clients that we work with, right? And they don't use this terminology necessarily. So it might be, the senior leadership team is the first view of information. And then instead of portfolio, it's actually organization or business unit. Or if you're thinking about mergers and acquisition type companies, like multiple different business units or companies. So instead of calling them programs, you might call them, modules, and for the projects, you might have projects and sub-projects and initiatives. So there's a lot of different terminology here, but you want to understand in a PMO hierarchy, like what those key pieces of information are to roll up for decision-making purposes. So a really basic one is just kind of that, PMO, you have different programs and projects. So we use this oftentimes for like smaller organizations. And then as you get kind of a higher one, you might have additional levels that you're adding. What you don't want to do is add too many levels earlier on and then get to your point, like where you're spending, especially if you don't have an automated tool to do this, where you're spending a little bit too much time, on the reporting aspects of it and not enough time on the doing piece of it. One thing to mention is that sometimes things skip levels, and that can be kind of shocking for organizations, but sometimes things report up directly to programs or report up to projects or report up directly to a portfolio depending on the initiative. So we had an organization that was going through a separation from its parent company, and that was like those projects went directly up to the executive level just because of the way it was. So making sure that your PMO structure is flexible enough to really account for your organizational change and how that works. So, all right. So we're going to go back to our common challenges. Melissa, did you have a chance to send out the results? All right. If not, I'm going to keep going. We'll try to get that at the end. So again, resourcing, capacity.
It to you, so you can pull it up on the screen.
You sent it to me. Okay.
In the chat.
Interesting. I don't see it. Okay. Maybe just double check on that, but I'm going to keep going. So common challenges. So we're going to go through. So resourcing and capacity planning. So these are some basic, we're going to give you a couple more specific examples, but when we're thinking about resourcing and capacity, the place I like to start is in the intake pipeline. So it's really important that you can see all the different requested work and current projects. The other piece is depending on your organization and your resources. In some organizations, teams are actually working like within teams as a whole, like if there maybe there is a Scrum team or an Agile team that works all together. And so they're actually full-time maybe on projects, which is great. But a lot of organizations, especially smaller organizations, you have business resources that aren't fully dedicated to projects. They're maybe partially dedicated to projects and partially dedicated to their full-time regular subject matter expert job, right, in operations. So understanding what allocation and what percentage allocation you have people for compared to their day job, right? So oftentimes really high level, just percentage allocation. So like if it's a non-project resource, it's a business resource, like the most that you're going to get them is 50%. If you get approval for that, sometimes it's only 20%, and just being aware of that. Defining the resource pool. So definitely the resources that are what I call kind of consulted first. So these are the resources that are on like every single project because they've been there forever. They have this special set of experience. And so everyone thinks that they need them. So moving them into a more consultative role versus a supportive hands on the keyboard role, and understanding that they're like across this many projects and kind of putting almost like work in progress limits on there, but in terms of how many projects that they can be on at a specific time, because even though they might only be 10% on each of these 8 projects, like the amount of time that you spend context switching and ramping up on meetings that they might have missed or something can be a lot. So starting to think about limiting the work in progress for specific individuals that are on multiple projects. Defining the level of granularity, so organizational time frame, project schedule. So oftentimes when I'm starting with an organization that maybe they just have a time card approach, just log in, log out, or their salary and they have no time logging, it can be really intimidating to go to the point of like, I'm logging all my time to a task. Like that's not usually how it works. Usually you need to have a progression as you go. So the first thing is actually starting oftentimes with the demand. And rather than doing it at like a task level in a project plan, starting it at a project level and starting it almost at a month level, and assume that your accuracy is like closer to 50%. And then as you get more comfortable with this concept, then you can move on. So even asking people to just say at a monthly level, oh, I spent 50% of my time on this or 20% of my time on this at a very high level. Now, sure, it's not going to be as accurate if you went down, but taking that leap from like not tracking time to like tracking time, or if you have operational resources that like aren't used to doing it, it can be too much. So think about the steps and how you're going to do that. And then, yeah, having a system, right? Having a system is really important. You don't need a system, honestly, depending on your organization size, but making sure that you have a system that is accessible and relatively user friendly for people to actually have accurate data, because going through this whole process and then having crap data is really frustrating and can really put you back really far. There are a lot of different time tracking tools. There are a lot of different project management and work management tools. Honestly, there aren't a lot of great like resourcing tools, in my humble opinion. If you have a great recommendation, I would love that. But have we done resource management? Of course we have, in a lot of different systems, anywhere from like enterprise level ERP systems and, you know, to much smaller systems. But the answer is the actual forecasting of work, looking at actuals, and being able to make strategic decisions and moving people around and leveling it. Like it's really still a gap, which is why it continues to be one of the biggest issues in this space. Again, if you don't have anything in place, I honestly, my personal is I go back to a spreadsheet when I start so that I understand the data structure and I understand what I'm looking for. So like I honestly, if an organization has nothing, I start with Excel. Other organizations like the board method, and there's free board options like anywhere from Trello to, you know, quick, there's a lot of different options here. But think about how do you get everything down in one place, and then starting to think about the different types of data that you're asked for. And usually I'm looking for things that are things that I have to do repeatedly or get asked for over and over and over again. Like, how do I start there? But that's, again, if your organization is starting from scratch, not if you already have something in place. Understanding project scope, cost, duration, resources, dependencies. Sounds crazy, but starting with ranges and really defining those ranges first. Sometimes people have really they're nervous about estimating. So I worked with a lot of tech company, you know, software developers, and they're just kind of, they don't like estimating. Agile, that's great. But at a high level, you do need to have, as a project manager in a PMO office, like you need to know what the cost is. You need to know what the duration is and who the resources are. So maybe starting from the point of t-shirt sizing, like small, medium, large, extra large, and defining what those are. And then as the project progresses in terms of like whether it's been reviewed or approved or how many resources are on it, you can progressively elaborate this information. So cost can go from like, okay, it's like, you know, under 250 to, you know, now we think it's, you know, we're targeting it in between 150 and 175 or something like that. So yeah. The other thing is the ability to put unnamed resources, really important. So if you boil people down to their roles, so like whether it's an analyst or developer or a marketing expert, something like that, but being able to use roles so that you can say, okay, I need a project manager on this, and then at a later time actually assign the project manager so that you can roll things up and actually say, okay, I need 360% of a project manager in March, and I only have one project manager. So I know I'm going to need to go get staff aug, or I'm going to hire because I actually need 360% for the next year and a half. So so being able to be able to roll up to an unnamed resource is what I call it. Reporting, analysis, we need time for that. And then portfolio governance, so utilizing resourcing reports for timely decision making. So honestly, what I see a lot of is resourcing. Maybe there's a weekly meeting if you have that, but like honestly, it gets to the point of things are in complete disaster, and then they start from scratch and like do it all over again. And then in some organizations, they will do like a weekly update until it's just a mess again, and then they have to do like a complete, you know, 360 and things like that. But how do you get to a point in a more mature PMO where you are able to maintain and make some changes as you go without, you know, a complete stop or direct piece? All right. So again, one of the things I like to use, it's one of my favorites. There's a lot of different versions like Pact, Pace. I mean, there's a lot of different, but I like to use Rasky. It's kind of my starting point. So is someone responsible for something? Is someone accountable? Are they supporting? I like supporting versus consulted because I find that a lot of resourcing constraints happen in this consulted place where someone doesn't have a responsibility for necessarily like building something or writing something up, but you need the same person across like 8 different projects because they're the only person that knows how this has been done or has done it before in a certain way. So articulating the supporting, which is hands on the keyboards, this person is assigned a task versus someone is consulted or they need a review or something like that before we can move on, versus people that are just informed, and make it clear that these people are just informed and what that communication is. How much time do I have left? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So let's see here, limited visibility on project status. So project plan, scope, milestones and things like that, articulating what are those milestones you're actually rolling up for executive view and make sure they have buy-in. This is the level of information that we need. So really thinking about your stakeholders. We use a tool called a RAID log all the time. We actually use this instead of meeting notes because really meetings are meant to be decisions or, or understanding action items or identifying risks or things like that. So we actually use a RAID log across. Project status dashboards and reports. So an important one, you guys, many of you might call it RAG, but red, yellow, green, or red, amber, green. And planned versus actuals. So understanding this is what we thought was going to happen and this is what actually happened, and then being able to look at the difference of that. So when I start talking about it, I'm talking about what project level information we need. So what is the project phase versus status? So I've seen this anywhere from like a 3 phase, which is like not approved, like in progress and closed, to like 9 or 10 phases. And oftentimes I'll have people break them out into multiple levels then and have like a life cycle and a project phase or something like that, or project phase and sub phase. But understanding what those phases are and ideally having those across projects, both agile and traditional, if your PMO has both, understanding what those key dates are they really only start and finish, or are they the start and finish of each phase? Or are there maybe billing milestones or something like that, but getting buy-in associated with what those key dates in the project are. And again, different projects might have different key dates, but where possible, you'd like to standardize that across so that you have the expectations of what dates you're reporting on, and that you can look across projects for that for data. Budgeting, what's been approved, what's been spent to date, what's been forecasted. Project roles, making sure you have them. So like when you have a project, what are the project role expectations? Can you put names to those different roles and their responsibilities? And then project health, defining what red, yellow, and green are. Put something out there. Oftentimes I'll go into an organization and they have red, yellow, green. They're not just tracking it for overall project health. They're looking at it for budget. They're looking at it for schedule. They're looking at it for client satisfaction or quality, but there's no definition of project health. What is a red project? What is a red project? And if every single project in your organization is red, or 50% of them, or honestly over 20%, then maybe you need to think about a red project, what is red now versus what you want red to be later, and think about maybe, or some other way to break this down, but defining what red, yellow, and green actually mean. Some of the ways that I like to see this, especially when you think about for schedule or budget, is I actually like to use a relative. So I like to use percentages instead of absolutes. So instead of saying that something is like, if something is more than 10K over budget, because that's an absolute, you might have a project that is literally 20K and that's 50%, and you might have a project that is 2 million. Again, depending on your organization size, et cetera. But what I like to do is say, hey, if it's more than 10% over in the remaining budget, then you are, it's red. But if you're 10% in the remaining budget, as in you're in the last phase, the remaining budget is much smaller. So it definitely comes in. Whereas in the beginning, you have a little bit more wiggle room because you don't know as much information. So defining what red, yellow, green means to your company, and be aware that it can change over time, but those definitions need to be public. RAID, what are the risks? What are the action items? What are the issues? What are the decisions? Not just using a task list, okay? And honestly, for me, I don't like having risks, issues, action items, decisions, meeting notes, like all of them in different places. Like, how do you consolidate this and roll this up so that people can see what those risks are? And then change orders and requests and making sure you have a change management system. So again, I mentioned we use a RAID log. One of my clients came up with this. I love it. They call theirs a CRAID log because I'd been harping on we need to have it all in one place because people don't know and risks become issues and all this other stuff. And they're like, well, if you want us to add change requests here right now because we don't have a change process, like why don't we call it CRAID? Okay, CRAID was born. I love it. So anyways, if you don't have a good change management process, you still need to track changes for a quick, Band-Aid solution that actually is pretty cool. Having all of your risks, actions, issues, decisions, changes all in one place, and being able to sort and report on it and things like that. Again, I'm just showing you the Excel version. We build this out in work management tools, but I want to use something that you can take away with you. So oftentimes in PMOs, too often I see the standard template set that you're given, but it's really not user friendly. It really doesn't apply to everyone. How are you providing the tools that can actually be managed up, and then allowing your PMs too that have multiple projects, how do they manage it in a way that's user friendly for them if they have multiple projects and multiple project teams. Dashboards, big fan of data visualization. There's a lot of really cool tools out there, and understanding kind of what's most useful. So whether it is project health, or maybe it is by project phase, or and how are they actionable? How are you, what is going to happen when they look at this information? Where do you want them to go? What do you want them to do? Are these people decision makers? What information are you giving them? So really spending some time about how that looks. Maybe it's in a PowerPoint right now and you're just updating it, and that's okay, but thinking about who it is. So I've got a couple of questions here. Zoho, yep, like Zoho. Decision time, very useful for risk management. Yep. So there's a lot of different tools in their space. There are literally hundreds of different project management tools. The only caution I would say is that I've also gone into organizations with 10 different tools, and because every project manager, every department has done it a little bit differently, and it makes it really hard to roll things up and provide a cohesive view that allows decision makers to really, so if you can do a beautiful dashboard, but you're only representing IT projects, or you're only representing marketing projects, how is the senior leadership supposed to be able to look at that compared to everything else? So yes, use tools and empower your team to use tools that make their jobs easier. When you're thinking about a PMO, be careful about how that information can be brought back together in a view that can be rolled up. A lot of the word I look for, I'm only technical enough to be dangerous, or at least that's how I represent myself. API driven, something that can use tools like Zapier or low code or no code solutions so that you don't get blocked by needing IT resources or a lot of investment to really bring these data sources together. Or a tool like Tableau or Power BI or something like that, where you can bring the data sources together and then visualize it. But again, standardization of data, mapping, all of this takes time to get configured and set up. So, all right. So gap between stakeholder and project team communication. Yes. Approval process for scope change. That goes back to that change management process. Project intake and approval, thinking about what that intake form is. What is the minimal amount of information you need in order to have that visibility of a potential project? So another thing that I see is organizations that put too many barriers to entry. Wrong tube. Sorry, guys. They put too many barriers to entry in order to be able to submit a new project or a new idea that may or may not get approved. So what is the minimal amount of information that you can get in order to have visibility that this new project or new idea might be coming? And then progressively elaborate it as it matures. So what is this intake form? And think about, who is the person that is logging this new project? Because oftentimes you've got an executive, you've got a senior leader that says, hey, it comes up in a meeting, it comes up in a call, it comes up in something. It's the person that's entering it isn't necessarily the person that's the sponsor on it. And you want to make that possible. But eventually you do need a sponsor. You do need that person to push it through. What is that information in the business case? Do you need an ROI? Do you need high level requirements? Does every project need that? Does it under a certain budget, or is it under a certain complexity, or is it if it's all within single department or organization, you don't need it, but there's some additional requirements in terms of what additional information, because what I hate to see is someone putting in 40 to 80 hours of work to flesh out this business case for this project. And then it's like, if someone had just looked at it and been like, no way, like it's not happening. So what is that minimal information so that you get visibility on projects earlier as a project manager, as a portfolio manager, as a program manager? I hate things that come in when they're already supposed to start. So I want earlier visibility, but I don't want crap to come in either. And I also don't want, for people to spend a huge amount of time on all these deliverables and they haven't even had other people, they haven't socialized it or had other people look at it or really aligned it to the strategic goals of the organization. Like there's got to be some sort of review process in here between intake and then, actual business case and high level requirements. And there's resources that are required to get that. Are those resources being allocated correctly? What are the expectations for those deliverables to be done? And then what does that approval and prioritization process look like? At what level of the organization do you need approval for different projects? Is it really only budget? Is it complexity? Is it, how many different departments or how many different teams are impacted by this? And then how do you prioritize work, not only that's coming in, but also looking at what you already have going on? Understanding that the steering committee might not have all the impacts of what that's going to happen, but have a staged process where, okay, we're looking at this, we're saying, yes, we want to go ahead with this, send it to the actual team that could do more resourcing with it, and then send it back. These are the impacts if we want to get it in by here. So again, a lot of different stuff here, but that project intake and approval process is really where I like to start when I'm looking to improve a process for a PMO or really extend the capability. Accountability and ownership, defined and documented roles, owners, and scope. So something I work with a lot of organizations on, I call it the hats, right? Which is what your title is, isn't your role on a project, right? Project manager maybe, but like really what your title is doesn't equate one-to-one with a project role. And I think I mentioned it earlier on, right? Project versus change management, project management versus change management. Smaller organizations, oftentimes same hat. Larger organizations, often separate hat, right? Same thing with like a tech lead or something like that. In some projects, the tech lead is also a developer, right? Two different hats. People can wear multiple hats, but they need to know their role in the project. In some cases, not recommended, not best practices, but like a project manager might also be the project sponsor or something along those lines. Again, different organizations, different needs, different cultures. Think about what your hat is and what your responsibility is for the hat. Those hats are the roles. So different roles. I'm a project manager. I can also be a program manager. I can be a program manager, but I might have a project underneath my program that I'm also managing, right? Two different hats. I have responsibilities as a program manager. I have responsibilities as a project manager. I have responsibilities as a stakeholder on another project, even though I'm not the project manager or program manager on that project. Okay. Understand what the different roles a project needs are, define them, right? And what are their responsibilities, and assign people to those roles. Identifying roles. This is one of our examples, right? So like a senior leadership role, a project manager, project sponsor, budget owner who's signing the paycheck, resource managers for all the different people that are project team members versus stakeholders, informed people that need to be aware of the end user and what's going on. One of the tools we use, I mentioned, is the RASCI, who's responsible, accountable. So thinking about, okay, senior leadership might be responsible for contracting. They're, responsible or accountable rather for submitting a new project. But different components, right? Who's responsible for the project plan? Who's responsible for change requests? Okay, so different things here. And again, different for every organization. This is just an example of it. One client, it might be a 5-person client, it might be a 5,000-person client. We have both of them. So it's very, it's different per organization, but think through it. Shared resources. So oftentimes one of the things that makes it a project in an organization or means that it has to go through a PMO or it has to go through a project structure is it has cross-functional resources. So resources that are not owned all within one department. If I'm a manager and all the resources that are working on this project are within, like, our report up to me, I might not need to go through this because the approval is all within my budget. It's all here. It's still a project because it's outside of operations. It's a department initiative or an improvement or something like that. It's still a project. It might not need as much oversight or something like that, or it might need more depending. But what does that shared resource pool look like, and what does that mean in terms of who needs to approve it? Visibility on timeline and dependencies, portfolio level view, so a report across all projects. And again, I want to be clear, not just all projects that are in the PMO. There might be projects that are specific to department. How are those people supposed to look at their work compared to the PMO work? That can be really hard. So that's something that is a more mature PMO. We're looking at that visibility and that dashboard and data visualization. Last one, right? Disruptions due to poorly planned project launches. So adding the governance piece in here. So whether this is standardized process, timeline, ownership, reviews, and approval, we have like a basic governance plan that we use for one client, which is, okay, before you go live, you have to understand how are people reporting bugs, defects, training, questions, access, permissioning issues? Who is reviewing it? It's not the project team after hypercare. So like, who is reviewing any changes to this process? What does that governance board look like? And then if you do need to make a change, and again, some of this is technical just because it is a client, a specific IT client, but thinking about if a change does happen, like, is it an immediate change? How does that get communicated versus a change that is kind of rolled out through a scheduled release cycle? So having some sort of governance in place to understand what actually gets to go live, what are the pieces that need to happen, cutover planning, communication, change management, training, like all those different pieces that have to happen in order for an organization to take a project live. I'm taking a break. I'm taking a moment. I think we have 7 minutes left. Were there any questions that came in? There were a ton of content there. I'm sorry about that. I rushed a little bit. Any questions anyone wants to touch on briefly in the last 7 minutes that we have? Okay, quiet bunch. We got a lot of you. Okay, so let's see here. I'll just bring up the results really quickly, and then I have just a couple more things if you enjoyed today and you were interested and you want to learn more. So it looks like resourcing forecasting is only 14%, so that's really interesting. So really it's lack of communication across projects, functions, and missing dependencies. That makes a lot of sense, right? Oftentimes before a PMO comes in, it's all these little projects, right, across the board. How do you roll them all up? Have the same structure enabled to. Limited visibility on project status. Yes, getting requested the same information over and over and over again, and feeling like you have to report out in 5 or 6 different places and different ways, and like having to do a lot of repeat effort. Projects are over budget, behind schedule, not delivering. So anyways, that's great. Thank you for sharing there. Let me go back really quickly. Okay, if you guys are looking for support, definitely we offer PMO training, workshops, process improvement that's specific to your organization and the pain points you're solving. We do PMO solution design, implementation, process improvement, and things like that. You can contact us, set up a quick consultation to see if it makes sense. If you liked this webinar, please follow us. Please, on LinkedIn, we have a lot of content on our YouTube channel, so feel free to subscribe. We have additional live webinars coming up that you are welcome to register for. We'll get all this information out to you via email. If no one has any questions, I really appreciate you all coming. We did record this. We will send out the slides, and I wish you all the best in your PMO journey wherever